Well, hello all. Welcome back to Miss Raga's Art Room. Here we are. Time for a chili pepper draw along. And we're going to be practicing too with this, our colored pencil layering and mixing. Okay, working on toned paper. So here's the supplies you should have. You're gonna need your toned paper. I recommend the kit of pencils that I have selected for you. If you don't have the kit of pencils that are preset, what you need is a color that can act as your light red, your middle red, and your dark red. Kind of an orangey yellow, a light yellow, a dark green and a light green, a brown, a black, and a white. Okay, so if you're working at home independently, those are the colors you'll need out of your own colored pencil kit if you don't have one of my pre-done ones. Okay, and of course, here's the chili pepper that I'm drawing from. I'm just keeping it off camera. It's a fake one, right? Just like the ones we have in class, because it's easier for me to have the camera just centered on my drawing. Okay, so I'm gonna try to keep my tools and everything out of the way as well. So I'm doing observational drawing. My pepper just happens to be off screen. Okay, so to get started, I'm gonna grab my white colored pencil. And remember to please put your name on the back of your drawing. The back of your paper is the one that's whichever has the scuffy marks on it, right? If it's got some scuffs on it, that's the back of your paper. Put your name on that side. All right, so speaking of, why don't I do that? Of course, you would put your period, right? 2A, 4B, etc. I always write sample. So I'll put that on there. Let's flip it over. Yay, terrific. Okay, so now I'm going to start with my white colored pencil. I like to start with the lightest color possible that I can draw with when I'm doing colored pencil work, because I don't want the gray, like regular number 2 pencil to show through onto my drawing, right? Nor do I want any of these dark colors to show through, like my contour line work. I want to be able to blend it out, and white works best for that. But if you are not working with any white, you don't have white, go with whatever color is lightest in your drawing as well. So maybe the light red or even the light yellow. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to lay in my table line first. You could work vertically on this if you wanted. I'm going to work horizontally because it just kind of fits better on my screen here. In fact, let me check to make sure I'm still centered. I am. Very good. Okay, and then I'm going to start drawing out the basic contour of the pepper. Now really fill the space with your pepper. It's got kind of like a tapered triangle. It's definitely longer than it is wide. And it's also got some nice angles for us to work with as well. Or kind of like sits and curves back up. This actually gets a little bit wider here. So this bump actually comes further down and gets a little bit wider this way. You can ever so slightly erase colored pencil. It doesn't erase great, but you can. So make sure you got that chunk eraser with you as well. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is kind of map in the top of that. This is kind of where I see that stem come out and down. It's got this kind of bump on the end, and then comes up and in and flares out. And I actually see the top of the greens here, and then kind of the lumps or bumps of the pepper actually block in a foreshortened view here. This actually comes further over this way. The rest of the front of that pepper green, and this kind of comes further around the back this way. There we go. Okay, and this dips in a bit, comes back up. And then the rest of the greens I see here are really foreshortened. They're kind of coming at me. So I see a bit of the green topper here, a bit here, and then it picks up again towards the side. Excellent. Now I'm going to use my white colored pencil to represent some of the basic folds and shadow lines. Now I don't have the best lighting source set up right now because I want to have the lights on bright for the camera so I can really see what I have. You know, ideally I'd have this in a better setup off to another side with its own source on it, but unfortunately my classroom doesn't quite allow for the best lighting. So we're gonna go with it. We're gonna make do and still do some good observational drawing. And I'm just kind of roughing in where I see some of those different kind of pepper value shapes happening. Value shadow shapes. Technically form shadow. We call it form because it's the shadow or the values on the form of the pepper. Now the other thing I want to draw in is its cast shadow. Now because I'm dealing with a lot of overhead lighting, I have kind of a flat cast shadow. A lot of light shining down on the top of the object, and the cast shadow kind of comes out, comes in, comes back out a little bit, and I'm even drawing the cast shadow in the white pencil outline. Okay, and right there is my nice contour outline of my pepper. Time for me to start some of the shading work. So join me in the next segment of this video. And we're back, time to start the shading work. So I actually want you to get your reds out. We're gonna start with the body value of this pepper, okay? And in your kit, you've got 3 reds, you've got a middle, a light, and a dark. Your dark almost looks brown, it's gonna be kind of like a burgundy color. So find your middle red, that's the Crimson Lake. Again, if you don't have my pack of pencils that you're working with, it's no big deal. Just grab a red that's clearly light, one that's kind of like your middle red, and then one that's a darker red than that middle, and it'll just work out fine, okay? And so what I'm gonna start doing is I'm gonna look at my pepper and using a middle to firm pressure, I'm gonna start observing where I see the darkest values happening on this pepper. And because I have such top-down lighting, I'm seeing the lightest values happening through the middle, my darkest towards the under, and actually back top side. Again, not terrific lighting, but hey, we're gonna work with it. Now I want you to bring your shading directly over top of that white outline, and that's how we're gonna first start to hide our contour. And then you're just shading in medium to firm pressure with this color, this middle red, the form shadow shapes that you observe on your pepper. Remember, shadow is shape. That's part of how we see the object. We see the object as it is because of these form shadows. And remember, you're shading with the form, so you're going to be wanting to use that soft curve shading stroke because it's not just a straight-sided object. You've got to curve those shadow and pencil strokes with the form of the pepper. Okay. And then as it starts to lighten up, you go ahead and you fade and lighten up on that pressure as it gets lighter coming into and around the pepper. Then in areas where you see those darker value shapes again, woo, you bring the heavy back. You darken it back up. And this is what we mean by observational drawing. You are observing this object and trying to recreate those different value shapes, shadow shapes, to the best of your ability on this object's form. And then where it's really light and it almost seems to like change into a different color, you really lighten up on that pressure and you let it just like fade away. So this is a great warm-up too, going into our next drawing unit because we haven't drawn in a while. So this is a good warm up to get some of those shading skills back and going. It's pretty light through this area in the center. I definitely have some darker value shapes happening to the side. And on the back underside of the pepper, I have a little reflected light happening over on that edge. This is staying pretty light up here. And notice as these bumps curve, I'm curving my shade stroke, and you can start to see the form begin to appear, right? You can start to see that that 3D, that illusion of that 3D volume start to come up on the pepper. Okay, my pencil a little sharp in here. A little sharper, Randy. Okay, coming in underneath. Going darker, heavier pencil pressure. You can see a nice form shadow. It's interesting, it kind of flattens out in the center, and then there's an additional fold in the middle. So it's catching a lot of light, but there's also still some additional value that's going to happen in there. Now I know we haven't gotten to the layering. Right now we're just focused on that pencil pressure. Okay, and continuing further under. Okay, kind of darker. And then under here. There's a little bit of reflected light happening here on the back side too, so I won't go too dark. Reflected light is when we see some extra additional light peeking around the back side of an object on its shadow side, because on non-straight-sided objects, light kind of bends or moves around the object. Okay, so then it starts to lighten up coming into this part of the pepper, but we have a fold again, which creates kind of an interesting light pattern. It kind of goes like darker here and then fades into this fold and is lighter towards these edges. Right, you're just observing what shape that light and dark actually makes. And then similarly up here, kind of has that fold again. We've got almost a bright light highlight in the middle. And we have this fold up to this curved ridge here. Some funky lighting with this pepper. Well, I'm going to draw what I see. Now remember to draw what you see from your pepper, or if I've provided you with a photograph to take home. Right, if you're not just working in class after school and doing a little catch-up, if I've provided you with a pepper photograph to work from, observe what's happening in your photograph. Don't just copy what you see here. You're not, I mean, you're still learning drawing technique if you just copy what I'm doing on the video. But if you're taking the technique I'm showing you on the video and then observing and applying it to your own drawing work, you are getting so much more out of it. You know, I've even had students too, when they were doing catch-up, gone to the grocery store and gotten themselves chili pepper to draw. Or a pepper like this to draw. Okay. There it is. That Looks pretty good. All right, so we've really got some form started. Now let's get to that layering. Let's start going in for the lighter values. So actually, in addition to your light red now, go ahead and grab that light red. We're going to use a mixture of our golden yellow and our light yellow. Again, if you do not have my kits of pencils that I've pre-packed for you, please look for in your own kit of pencils a kind of like orange and a yellow as well. Okay. And now in the areas where you see those light value shapes happening, go ahead and layer in that lighter, more orangey red with some of that orangey yellow on top of it. And now you're going to start to build in those lighter values. And this is where the layering gets to it. So we can see and you may have to use kind of a, I would say a firm to a medium firm pressure to really get the layering to work. Okay. You just kind of keep working back and forth, layering color in. Remember, when we're talking about dark versus light color, we're still talking about value, right? We've just added hue into the mix. Hue can still have value. Can be a dark blue, a light blue, right? And by using those different hues and values, that's what's going to create the illusion of form on this pepper. And anywhere maybe you feel like, oh, I need to go darker with my other red, go back in with it. You're like, oh, I should have really gone dark in there with that middle red value. Go back in. Just kind of constantly working these layers back and forth. Start working into these really light areas. I'm going to start my curve shading stroke, little circles. I'm going to start layering in my light red to these areas with some of that orange and yellow. And don't worry, I know it's going to feel like it's flattening out a bit, like, oh, you know, it looked better when I just had that light shading. But remember, we haven't built in our darks yet. We just started with our middle value and started creating that ground for mixing and layering colored pencil in. Colored pencil takes time and it takes patience as well. It really does. Because it builds slowly. You don't get there all at once. You have to really kind of work it a bit. Okay, so now we've kind of layered in some of those lighter values on our pepper. Now we're going to go in with our dark red pencil, okay, and start working in some of those darker red values. And now this one, you're going to go for that firm to middle pressure again. And you're going to go back and you're going to look for those darkest value shapes again and layer over top into your red. And do you see how that starts to bring out some more of that form again? Same rules apply. Where you need it to kind of fade into the next value, you're going to lighten up on that pencil pressure. Where you need it to be really dark red, you're going to do a nice firm pencil pressure. And this is, if you're working with the pencil kits, this is your Tuscan red. It's kind of like a burgundy brown red. If you don't have my pencil kit, like I said, and you're just working independently at home, find a dark value red. Remember, draw-alongs are about building our skill. They're not about perfection right off the bat. And feel free to work back and forth between, you know, your middle red and your Tuscan red as well. If you feel like it's all getting a bit too brown or a bit too, you know, whatever color it happens to be. Okay. And you can see that form is really starting to shine through. It's really starting to get some beautiful volume to it. Heck, you can even, if you want to be a little bit more reddy red, you can even mix some of the light red right over top of that of the Tuscan red as well. And what's nice is you can kind of already follow the map of the previous laid in value, whether it be the dark red or light red. You just kind of keep working back and forth between these different values, and this really starts to kind of fade back into these lighter values up here. Okay. The shadow actually almost kind of connects down at this bottom section here, so I'm gonna darken that up a bit. Alright, I'm getting those. Remembering to shade with the form. Okay, and then I'm going to bring some of my lighter red just to blend back over a few of these areas. And what I love about colored pencils too is once you start getting those layers of wax built up and kind of sticking to each other, really just start to build up quite nicely. There we go. Okay, we've got some nice form on there. Now for any really dark areas, I'm just going to go in with a teeny touch of black. This is a lighter pressure on this. I'm not doing heavy, and I'm going to mix it in with my Tuscan Red, just in any areas that really do need to go quite dark. Just like I've got a few little spots. And on the outer edge of the pepper here. And whenever I add black, and I make sure to layer whatever hue I want to blend that into, you know, in this case my red back over it, because I never want to feel like there's like a weird like black spot in my drawing or something. Like I just, you know, you don't want to feel like there's a hole in your drawing anywhere. Back over any of those areas where you might have some really dark values. Okay, that's starting to look really good. Oh, and you know what? I forgot to fill in a little bit of my bright red here on the front side edge. All right, and get a little bit more of that orange in the top section there. Okay, cool. So let's work towards a little bit of our green. Let's get our greens and browns out now. Let's start working on that pepper top. Again, I've got a lot of light coming down from the top side, and so that means I can see the under edge of my pepper stem there is darker. Okay, and the upper edge of my pepper stem is definitely lighter. So let's actually start with our dark green. I want you to look for where you see those darker value shapes happening. I'm going to start with the dark green first. Again, if you don't have, that would be the kelp green. Again, if you are not working with my preset mix of pencils, just find a dark green and a light green. And we're just recreating this pepper stem. And same thing before, on the leaves and on the stem, you're looking for where you see dark value and light value shape. So for instance, I can definitely see dark value shape coming around here. It gets light through here. It's dark all around this little ridge and ring. It gets dark underneath this edge. And then a little dark here and here. Primarily dark on the under edge of this little stem bit where it curves to the back. And you're just observing those form shadows. And then as it goes towards lighter, again, you just fade it. You just let it go and be a lighter pencil pressure, and let that green just kind of fade out. Because then we'll bring our lighter green over top. Okay, now we're going to take our light green pencil. Okay, so again, if you're working with my kit, that's like the Kelly green. And we're going to work with the Kelly green, the lemon yellow, and even a little bit of the white. Okay, and so in our areas where we have that lighter green, I'm going to put down some light green. Where we see it get really kind of yellowy and bright, we're going to mix in the lemon yellow right with it. You're going to have to, with the lemon yellow, use a pretty firm pressure to get it in there. And then you just kind of start working back and forth, between those different values. So I'm looking for the lightest parts of the stem. I'm putting in those values. The darkest part of the stem has that darkest green. And we'll go back and even work some blacks and browns into that green as well. And when you point that it gets really light too, we can go in and mix in a bit of white as well. The reason I like using tone paper too on colored pencil drawings is it just gives it a bit more depth and richness. You don't have to worry so much about having like the white of the paper showing through. That extra value of the gray tone helps to give a richness to the colored pencil that looks really sharp. Looks really nice. Gives it a bit more of a finished, less scratchy look. Okay, now with our dark green, we can go back in and mix in a little bit of brown and black to really darken up any areas of our dark green where we really need that darker value. So I'm going to go in and work with my black colored pencil, layering back and forth, and getting some of the darker values in by mixing in some of that black, creating a shade of this green. Okay, and then anywhere I want to go even lighter, I'm actually going to take my white colored pencil and get in there and blend in a little bit of white over top those lightest bits of green as well. And even add in with my dark green where I see some little bits of texture on that stem. And that looks really nice. Okay, terrific. Now, next thing I want to do, okay, is I'm going to take my eraser. And on the surface of my pepper, I'm going to look for where I see any little areas where there are highlights on this rounded form because it's got that shiny surface. So I want to include any little highlight areas I might see. So I'm going to go back with my eraser and pull some of that wax colored pencil out with my eraser first, and then I'll use the white colored pencil to come back in and put some highlights back in over the surface. Remember, a highlight is where so much light's being reflected back at your eye that we actually see a bright white spot. Talk to that a little bit back in our flat to round draw along. So now we're going to apply it here as well to our chili pepper. Okay, so I'm going to take my white colored pencil, I'm going to go right in and put in those highlights and even blend it out a little bit into the surrounding kind of color pencil area. Blend it into the bits of extra of the colored pencil. I just want to hit the top edge of this ridge here. This is where I was talking about. I was seeing a lot of light kind of hitting on the edge of the chili pepper. It was creating some of these really wacky highlights happening on the surface. There we go. And then even still, I've got a little bit of a reverse highlight happening on the under edge, so I'm going to just put that in where I see it happening. A little reverse highlight here. Funny to see that. Okay, and that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to pause here because our next step is we're going to blend our pepper. Okay, and then we're going to give this pepper a setting. We're going to start putting it on a ground and a background and add its cast shadow. Okay, ladies and gents, so you're going to want to grab your colorless blender next. If you haven't gotten a colorless blender stick or pencil from me, you can always do this with a Q-tip as well, or a tortillon. And what we're going to do is just use the colorless blender. Remember, all a colorless blender is just the colored pencil wax without any pigment in it. We're going to use it to just start blending together some of that pencil work. Now, do not just smear over the whole surface and be like it's blended, right? You are still using this as a drawing tool. So you're still going to use a curved blending stroke the same way we would use a curved blending stroke on a regular pencil drawing. You are not just smudging, you are directing the blend of this pencil. And you do have to use a firm hand with this. Got to use a firm hand, okay? Now, I personally actually prefer the wax blending sticks over the pencil. I like the result better, but everybody's got their own personal preference for what they like. You know, you as an artist will develop what works for you. All right, that's a nice blended pepper. Okay, terrific. Let's start getting a sense of space for this pepper to sit in. Go ahead and grab your white colored pencil. We're going to add a nice light tone to the sky or our wall, and I'm going to rotate my paper so it's easier to shade. And I'm just going to put down a nice even value, a nice even tone. We're going to get right up to the edge of our paper as well. Tip your pencil to the side too, and we're just doing a nice even light pressure. Just give me a little sense of that wall space behind where the pepper is sitting. It's okay to see the texture of the texture of the paper for the background. We're just getting a little value back there. And you could choose any color you wanted for the background, but just to really show off the chili pepper, I figured nice and neutral. We'll keep it in the browns and whites and grays. I mean, we could also leave just the gray of the paper in the background, but I want this, this practice drawing to have a bit more finish to it. We want it to feel refined. Okay. Okay, now we're going to grab our brown colored pencil. And we're going to add in our tabletop. My tabletop looks a little uneven. Let me fix that for a second here. I got a little cockeyed, it looks like. See if that looks straighter. That looks better. That looks more even. Okay, and now we're gonna add the, oops, to resharpen, the brown now for the tabletop. Okay, so let's go ahead and put our tabletop down. We're actually gonna put, you know, kind of medium pressure again on our tabletop. Really give us a nice sense of space where this pepper is. Okay, make sure you bring, when you are shading your tabletop, no halos. Bring your tabletop right up to the edge of your pepper. Do your most even pressure you can. It doesn't matter which direction you work from, right? You could work from front of the picture page to the back of the picture page to the front, completely up to you. The key is you just want to kind of get it even. So it's an even pressure across the surface. You're also going to bring this directly over top the outline where you originally had the cast shadow. You should still be able to hopefully see the outline of the cast shadow through the pencil. If you lose it too much, no worries, we'll redraw it lightly. Right, and already you can see why we use the white colored pencil, because we've now really blended out, for the most part, anywhere we saw any of those outlines. Now, it looks a little floaty still, but that's because we haven't anchored it with the cast shadow. At least now we have a sense of space that this pepper's sitting in. And do really good craftsmanship. Really get your shading right to the edge of the paper. And the nice thing too about backgrounds is, right, we don't have to do any curved shading. We're just putting in nice planes of value of color. There we go. And there we go. Making sure I get right up to the edge. Of the paper, laying down a good layer of pencil. And now we're going to start to work that cast shadow. So we've got the ground in, and I can still see the faint outline of where my cast shadow is. Again, if you've lost that, it's no biggie. Just go back with your white colored pencil and very lightly re-sketch in anywhere you've lost that basic shape. Okay, now we're going to work with our black colored pencil this time. We're going to go right up underneath the chili pepper, and that's going to be our heaviest value, but we're not going to treat this as line, because what we're then going to do is allow that shadow to fade out, lighter pressure towards the edge. So we're heaviest pressure underneath the chili pepper, and we're going to let it fade out towards the edge. And then we'll go back and we will blend more brown over top of it. Now where my chili pepper is really resting on the table, that's where I see kind of the darkest value happening. Where it moves, kind of lifts up off the table, that's where I get that much lighter gray shadow. Don't leave a halo though, make sure you bring it right up to the edge of the object. Heaviest in and under here. And then fades away. It gets even a little bit further out here. And it's very light here where it's clearly far off the table. Okay, now I'm going to blend some of the brown back into it because I don't want it to just feel like it's kind of this, like the shadow's separate from the tabletop. I want it to feel like it's a part of the tabletop. So I'm going to use some firmer pressure right underneath the chili pepper and really blend into where that black colored pencil is. And then anywhere I feel like I need to go darker with the cast shadow, I will. It needs to be a little bit heavier underneath here. Again, I'm just kind of working back and forth between the two pencils, layering them up. And now I've got a much better sense of space. Okay, final component is we're going to take that wax blending stump again, okay? Wax blending piece, okay? Colorless blender. And we are going to go over our cast shadow and then into our background and our wall area. So we just want to give everything a nice blend, really mix it together. And then we can go back and adjust our cast shadow as needed. And give ourselves a smooth, finished, polished look to this pencil, okay? And again, this is part of why I really like the stick version. I think they last longer too. But you use that firm pressure right over top of the colored pencil work you did. You see how that starts to give you a better coverage and a better blend and gets rid of some of the stroke as well. Now rotate your hand into a comfortable position as you go, as you work. If you find any area that you need to go back and you're like, ooh, you know what, I gotta add some more pencil to the ground or whatnot to the tabletop, then by all means, go ahead and do it. Make sure you blend right up to the edge of your pepper as well, so it kind of all feels like it comes together. Okay, so there's the ground, and let's work our sky color a bit. Ooh, yeah, careful, make sure you kind of dust it off your blending stick a little, or else you'll end up with smudges in it, like I just did. And kind of pick some of the extra pencil that may have blended up on it. And give your hand a break as needed. Okay, and there it is, ladies and gentlemen. There's our completed pepper draw along. Okay, we've done some good observational drawing. We've practiced layered colored pencil technique. Again, any areas that you want to go back and do some further touch-ups in your background, please do so. Remember, the colorless blender is just that. It's just wax, so you can go back and touch up and add more as needed. We've got a good sense of space this pepper sitting in, as well as the ground, so nice artist signature. Okay, make sure again that your name is on the back, and this is ready to turn in for your draw along points. All right, thanks so much for practicing some layered colored pencil with me today, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to applying some of these techniques onto our next project. All right, take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye. See you again in the art room.